Welcome back to Small Caps. My name's Kerry Stevenson, and normally I would be talking to you and bringing you CEOs of ASX listed companies, talking to you about what's happening in gold or copper or uranium or silver or whatever. Today I'm bringing you something very different. Do you know why? Because the world is changing and everybody out there knows that everything's going digital. So I have asked the co-founder and the CEO of Independent Reserve. His name is Adrian Przelozny, and he's going to talk to us about why digital is so important, who are Independent Reserve, and why we all should sit up and take notice and not just keep all our money in the banks in cash. Adrian, welcome to Small Caps. Great to see you. Thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are at the moment.
It's my pleasure, Kerry. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, let's just start with a very brief overview of who are Independent Reserve.
Sure. Independent Reserve is a cryptocurrency exchange that I co-founded back in 2013, and we've now grown to become one of Australia's largest and oldest cryptocurrency exchanges.
Okay. Well, how the heck, back in 2000, what were you doing before this, and why did you decide to set up an exchange like Independent Reserve?
Yeah, so I guess traditionally I'm a bit of a nerd. Prior to Independent Reserve, I ran an IT consultancy. Okay. We build kind of large enterprise things for big banks. We built a broadcast management system over Channel 9. And I had about, I don't know, probably about 8 or 9 guys working with me at the time. And one of my friends initially introduced me to cryptocurrencies, probably around 2010, 2011. He told me there's this thing called Bitcoin. It's on the internet. It's decentralized. It's awesome. We should have a look at it. I looked at it. I guess like most people, initially I dismissed it. I thought it was kind of interesting. It was a curiosity. But I think most people's Bitcoin story starts with that first moment where they first hear about it and they dismiss it and then they regret it later on. So I was no different to everybody else in that respect. But then I was lucky enough that I heard about it again, maybe 2012, 2013. And I was like, oh, Bitcoin, I remember this from a few years ago. Surprised it's around still. Okay, well, let me look into it a little bit more deeply. So I did a lot of reading about it. I did a lot of research into the tech. I built a client that connects to the network. I kind of wanted to see under the covers, does it actually work the way it's advertised? Is it a scam? Is it for real? Then I read about the economics of it, the issuance policy. I'm like, well, this is actually really, really interesting. It's kind of modeled on a precious metal. You know, the issuance is very predictable. We know exactly how much there'll be at any point into the future, how much there ever was at any point in the past. This is really interesting. I should maybe invest in this thing. So I wanted to get some Bitcoin for myself. And back in 2013, there was an exchange in Japan called Mt. Gox. And that was literally the only place in the world where you could get your own Bitcoin. It's quite infamous now because back in, I think, 2014, 2015, they got hacked and they lost about $100 million of client funds, which was by far the biggest hack at the time in this area. But back in 2013, it was really the only place you could use. So I opened up an account, took about a week or 2 to get myself verified, which I felt was very slow and very frustrating. The price of Bitcoin went, from $50 to $100. And I thought, oh, well, I guess I've missed the boat. But
wow.
In the end, I ended up being able to acquire my own Bitcoin, which was great. But yeah, the process was very arduous. The platform was obviously not designed, to the standards that one might expect a financial exchange to work at. It was kind of, didn't look very good. It was hard to use. It was
sorry.
I think that's your phone.
It is. Sorry about that. That's
no worries.
That's me being naughty and not putting my phone on silent. There we go.
Turn off your phones, please.
Always the way. There we go. Let's start again.
Yeah. So that was kind of.
So were you in Mt. Gox? Did you lose what you put on?
No, I didn't lose anything. So I got everything off the exchange pretty much right away.
Wow.
But it kind of gave me the idea with a few other guys that, hey, we could actually build an exchange that is a lot better, that actually works in the way people expect an exchange to work. It's kind of when you log on to your internet banking, you don't really worry that the bank's going to get hacked and lose your money or whatever. It's just kind of trust that it's there and it'll be there and it's regulated and it's trusted and it's really safe. So that's kind of what we felt that was needed in this space. So we incorporated Independent Reserve mid 2013, we raised a little bit of money, which was quite arduous at the time when no one knew what Bitcoin was and what it was that we were raising money for. So we were able to get, I guess, some early believers that believed in us, in our idea, what we were building. Raised about $500,000 at the time. We built the platform in-house, took us about 18 months. During that time, we also applied for an AFSL with ASIC because we felt regulation is really important in this space. You need regulation to bring crypto to the masses, because my mum and dad don't want to be investing in something that's unregulated, right? So we really felt that was really important right from the start. However, ASIC didn't quite share our views. They were a little bit confused what it was that we were asking them for. In fact, when Mt. Gox got hacked, I remember getting a call from the person at ASIC who was looking after our AFSL application, and he said that now that Bitcoin has gone bankrupt, you don't need a license to run a Bitcoin exchange.
Wow. It just shows the lack of knowledge of anything.
Anyway, that was interesting. But in the end, they issued us a relief letter that basically said that cryptocurrencies aren't a financial product, and AFSL is not required to run a cryptocurrency exchange. And I guess they were just hoping we'd go away. But here we are, still 8 years later, still talking to ASIC. So we launched Independent Reserve probably late 2014. The markets were super dead. No one really cared. Took us probably like two years to acquire our first 50,000 customers. And then 2017, the markets just went nuts. So we experienced exponential growth. Grew a customer base to probably about 100,000 customers in late 2017. Employed a whole bunch of new staff, got a big office, and I guess now we've got about 200,000 customers, mostly from Australia. We've got about 50 staff. Got an office over in Singapore, employing a few people there. We actually got a license from the regulator over in Singapore. We managed to get Austrac to regulate this whole area from an AML point of view, but we're still chipping away at ASIC. Here we are, and markets are good, things are looking up. Everyone's pretty excited.
Okay, so that's who Independent Reserve are, but we're talking about a different asset class, if you like. And at the moment, everything's going digital, including government saying, well, you don't need cash anymore. Everything is going to go digital. But as I always say, the purchasing power of your funding money is going down and down and down, and people don't actually realize that, whereas Bitcoin is limited to 21 million Bitcoin, which is good. Can't keep printing the Bitcoin. Let me ask you, out of all of those, what reasons do you feel that people should have to sit up and look? It's all about, to me, is diversification. If you have everything in cash and your purchasing power is going down, what's the investment case for investing in? And is it an investment, or is it just shifting your funny money from one way of dealing with cash to another, if that makes sense?
Well, I think the obvious investment case is just to kind of look at the charts. I mean, it's the best performing asset of the last 8 years. So when we started, one Bitcoin was worth about $80 to $100. It's now worth about $68,000. So I mean, those numbers kind of speak for themselves. But ultimately, I think Michael Saylor put it really well when he said when he looked at the balance sheet. He just saw all this cash and he felt like this is a melting ice cube. This thing is just going to get worth less and less and less as it's devalued by the Fed that just prints more and more money. And he didn't want the balance sheet of his company to be exposed to, the risk of an entity that he cannot control just devaluing that asset. So the great thing about Bitcoin, and the thing that's attracted a lot of people to Bitcoin, is the fact that the model has the scarcity built into it. You know exactly how many Bitcoin exists right now, and this is provable, and you know exactly how many Bitcoin will exist next week, next year. And this is what a lot of people really love about it. So it's very similar to a precious metal like a gold, where there's a limited amount of gold in the earth. You can't produce more gold, but it's a little bit different in the sense that you know exactly how much Bitcoin there is, whereas you can only have estimates of how much is in the earth. And there's also the off chance that an asteroid will hit the earth with a bunch of gold, and there'll be more. So it's also got other advantages in that it's much easier to store. You know, you can store your Bitcoin on a piece of paper, whereas to store your gold, you need a vault. It's much easier to transport. I can send Bitcoin across the world instantly, pretty much for free, without any hassle. But if I had $1 million worth of gold, I'd be pretty wary about what I do if I want to move it. I'd have to hire some guards with some trucks and some guns and all sorts of things, right? So it's got a lot of advantages of gold. It's really like the gold for the internet age, really. And that's how a lot of people see it.
What do you think is going to take? Because a lot of people will turn around, you know, you've got people like Peter Schiff turning around and saying it's a scam and it's going to go to zero. You've got other people saying it's just too hard. What do you think it is going to take, and when do you think it might happen that mass adoption will take place? Because it's certainly, it came into existence in 2010. Here we are in 2021. I know it's only 11 years. It's nothing in the grand scheme of things. What do you think it's going to take for, I guess, people to turn around and say, yeah, I get it? Because it's very volatile, isn't it, Adrian? That's one of people's arguments is the price goes, it's so volatile, I don't want to get involved, because if I buy a Bitcoin today, how do I know what it's going to be worth tomorrow?
Yeah, so I guess there's a few things to unpack in that question. I guess the first part of your question was, what's it going to take for it to hit the mainstream? I would argue that you don't really need any more than what's already happening. It's an unstoppable train. I mean, you're now seeing, you're seeing a lot more institutions now begin to get into this space. You're seeing all the large banks trade cryptocurrencies. In a survey which we did, so every year we do a survey called the Independent Reserve Cryptocurrency Index, where we ask 1,000 random Australians their views on, whether they hold cryptocurrency, how they feel about cryptocurrency, do they know what it is. And last year when we did it, I think it was about 6 or 7 months ago, we found that 1 in 5 Australians either own crypto or have owned crypto in the past. So that's 20% adoption. That's already pretty high. It's definitely a lot higher than I would have imagined when I began back in 2013. And, you're also starting to see some very small countries adopt Bitcoin as the legal tender in that country. So
El Salvador, wasn't it?
El Salvador announced this 2 or 3 months ago. And I get that El Salvador is not exactly an economic powerhouse, but it is a country, it's a sovereign state. So this is how it starts. I would argue that it already is hitting the mainstream, and it's just going to it's just going to increase. It's a train that cannot be stopped now. And your other question about the volatility, well, I think the volatility is really a function of the size of the market cap and the liquidity in that market. So I think what you'll find is, as the price of Bitcoin increases, the market cap will obviously increase, which will mean that there'll be more liquidity in the markets. The market depth will be a lot more than what it is now, and that will reduce the volatility. So the volatility now, even though it may look like it's very, very high, it's actually a lot lower than what it was when I started.
Right.
So it has been reducing over time, and I think that trend will continue until maybe in 20 years' time, it'll be as volatile as a gold. I don't know. But I think it's heading in that direction.
So what do you think it's going to take for even mainstream media to understand that this is not it's not something that's going away, but it's something that will be adopted? Because we said before, governments around the world are printing the funny money hand over fist, but you cannot print any more Bitcoin. Ladies and gentlemen, there's 21 million Bitcoin. That's all there will ever be. And then within a Bitcoin, you've got Satoshis. How many Satoshis within a Bitcoin?
10 to the power of 8. So what's that? 10
to the power of 8?
100 million?
100 million, something like, 10 to the power
8 zeros. Yeah.
8 zeros. Okay, so there's a lot. So it can be divided and divided and divided within the Bitcoin, if you like.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the fact that they keep printing cash. What is it going to take? Is 11 years not long enough? Are you saying that it's going to probably be another 20 years, or what's the tipping point?
So I think most people, and Australians especially, they understand the idea of scarcity very well. I mean, you only need to look at the housing market in Sydney, right? It's just a trend that always goes up, and property prices always goes up. And you ask yourself why? Well, it's because people understand that you can't print more land, right? Well, once you got your house on a piece of land in Sydney, well, you know that the scarcity is there. You just can't make more Sydney. You can't make more real estate near the harbour. So I think that concept is already very well understood. But I think for people to get more comfortable with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, that just takes time. And that's the biggest ally on the side of Bitcoin. The longer it exists, the more people become comfortable with it, because people are comfortable with what they're familiar with. So you got to remember that the young generation now, they're kind of growing up in the world that Bitcoin's kind of always been around as far as they remember. They're going to be very comfortable with it going forward. So I think it's just time.
There are we've mainly focused on Bitcoin at the moment. That was, I guess, it's the granddaddy of all the cryptocurrencies. It was the first one there, but now we've got thousands of altcoins. And you spoke earlier about regulation. Dogecoin that went up thousands of percent. How do you stop people from potentially speculating in this space and losing everything, and then kind of going around saying, well, it is a scam because I've lost all my money? What do you say to that? How do they know where to put their money?
Look, I mean, it's absolutely true that in the last few years we've seen, I guess, a Cambrian explosion of just lots of different coins, right? And they all pretend to do different things, and a lot of them probably won't exist in 10 years' time. I think, with an investment like any other investment, like, when you look at the number of shares on the ASX, how do you know which companies are good, which are bad? Well, it's about education, right?
Very good
so
point.
You need to, the onus is on the investor to do the reading, to do the education, to know what it is they're investing in. I know that a lot of people tend to be quite lazy in this respect, and they, want to rely on a financial advisor or another person to tell them what to do. But in the world of crypto, I guess the premise of Bitcoin was to be your own bank, right? To take responsibility of your assets, take responsibility of to basically reduce the need on relying on anyone else. You can keep your money yourself. You can you can basically do everything yourself, which means the responsibility is on you to do the education yourself on where you want to invest. And there's a lot of resources out there. But I guess I would recommend to anyone new to only kind of invest in the more established, larger coins. You're much less likely to go wrong.
And with independent reserve, is it easy? Like, can I buy Bitcoin on independent reserve? Can I hold it? Like, how does it work? Because you said that when you went to Mt. Gox, it was very clunky and very difficult to use. Have you put together something which for the average Joe, they can go on and it's as easy as opening a bank account? I mean, how does it work?
I'd say so. So, we've tried to make our platform as easy to use as we can. Opening an account is pretty easy. You can do everything online, takes about a day. So we need to check who you are. So there are laws in Australia that basically mean that we need to know who the customer is. So we'll ask you for your ID and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But it's probably no different to opening a account at a bank online, but we do everything online. And then once your account is opened up, you make a deposit of Australian dollars into an account independent reserve. So it's basically an EFT transfer or an OSCO transfer, which is instant. Then the money appears in your independent reserve account, and then you can use that to get whatever you want. So at the moment, we offer about 28 different cryptocurrencies in independent reserve. And I guess these are all cryptocurrencies that we've done the research on to make sure. I mean, I can't guarantee that that will only ever move up in the price, but I can guarantee that they're not a scam because we've done our research.
Oh, that's good to know. That's really good to know. Yeah. Okay. So you've done some research. You don't just put everything onto independent reserve.
Yeah, of course. So out of the hundreds of cryptos that are available, we've listed 28 or 30. But yeah.
Oh. A moment ago, you also spoke about regulation and that there is no current regulation in Australia. Do you see that changing in the near future? And is that a good or a bad thing?
Yes. So I wouldn't say there's no regulation in Australia, but there's missing regulation that needs to exist. So we've always really believed that in order for cryptocurrencies to be a mainstream asset class, trust that people can invest in. Regulation is really important to protect consumers and to make sure that the exchanges and the counterparties that they work with, they do everything in they do everything in a way that conforms with all the regulations and all the laws. So probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we really felt that regulation around AML was really important. So we spent a lot of time with AUSTRAC, who's the AML regulator in Australia.
And for those, sorry to interrupt you, AML means anti-money laundering, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know.
That's correct, because there was a lot of, I guess, news stories and people talking about cryptocurrencies being used for various nefarious purposes. So we felt like if AUSTRAC, the AML regulator who polices the banks and every other institution in Australia, also looked at the cryptocurrency space, that would reduce some of the perceived risks of cryptocurrency in Australia. So we spent quite a bit of time with AUSTRAC. I spent a lot of time in the offices of AUSTRAC, educating AUSTRAC about cryptocurrency exchanges, which parts we felt need regulation, which parts we felt could not be easily regulated. And in 2018, AUSTRAC brought cryptocurrency exchanges under the AML Act, which basically meant that crypto exchanges had to conform to a whole bunch of regulations and do things that other financial institutions do in Australia, which is, for example, know who the customers are, report various transactions that they felt weren't right, or there's a whole bunch of things that we need to do. But I guess there's regulation that is still not quite here in Australia that we believe is required for the market to mature. And we feel like it's time for ASIC to also enter the party and potentially provide licensing for cryptocurrency exchanges, something like an AFSL regime, something that ensures that the custody of cryptocurrency is held in a way that basically ensures that this cryptocurrency won't get lost. So you need to remember that cryptocurrencies are a bearer instrument, I guess quite a lot like holding gold, right? If you have this asset and if you lose it, well, it's kind of gone.
Yeah.
And there's not much you can do about that. So so when you trust a third party like an exchange to hold the cryptocurrency on your behalf, you need to trust that they do it in the right way. You need to make sure that there's an auditor that checks that the cryptocurrency is actually there, that there are some IT controls in place, that everything's done in a way that ensures that the assets being held aren't going to be lost. So
yeah, like Mount Gox.
This is what we would like to see ASIC potentially bring in some kind of a licensing regime and then create the regulation around that. So this is what we've been working on for quite a while now.
There's lots of things going on in the background. You said just a short while ago about you're opening up in Singapore. So you're an Australian company. What's the role that Singapore is playing in your growth?
That's right. Yeah. So about 2 years ago, the MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, like the ASIC equivalent over in Singapore, they introduced a licensing regime for cryptocurrency exchanges. And about 180 exchanges opened an office there, and they applied for the license. So pretty much every exchange in the world thought that this would be a good place to have an office and to operate. And we opened our office there about 18 months ago now, and we applied for the license along with everybody else. And as of last month, we were the first exchange to be granted an in-principle approval to operate a licensed cryptocurrency exchange in Singapore. So
you're the first.
Yeah, we were the first. So we beat
congratulations.
Big international exchanges. We beat pretty much all the banks in Singapore. So the second license was granted, and I think we're still the only two that was granted to the largest bank in Singapore. So we were able to beat them as well.
Wow,
so that was pretty good. So it was kind of a testament to the compliance that we do and to how well we can work with the regulators.
But again, why did you want to go up to Singapore?
So, as I said, we feel like regulation is very important in this space. And once the regulation exists, it creates the certainty for a lot of institutional investment.
Yep.
So we and every other exchange wants to operate in the markets that are well regulated, because that creates a great environment for investment.
Right. Yeah. So giving that certainty, I guess. We're running out of time, Adrian. There's so much more that we could talk about, especially with so many different coins out there. So if people want to find out more about Independent Reserve, if they want to open up an account, how do they find you? What's the best way for them to find you?
Just go to our website, independentreserve.com. All the information is there.
And some educational, a bit of education on there as well? Or?
Absolutely. So we have a blog where we have a lot of stuff. We actually have a book which we wrote back in 2014. It's freely available on our website. It's a pretty good book. I highly recommend it. And it explains a lot of the, basically a lot of the key concepts really well, I think.
What's the book called?
It's called The People's Money.
Oh, nice.
Tepper, one of the other founders of Independent Reserve.
Okay, well, I'll make sure we put a link below, but The People's Money, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. Something for you to really get your teeth into. And as Adrian said at the start, it's all about getting yourself educated and understanding this market rather than just piling in and speculating, because at the end of the day, it is your money and it is your, I guess, you need to make sure that you protect it and you get educated. Adrian Przelozny, thank you so much for joining me on Small Caps today to try and unwind a little bit about this cryptocurrency market. Really enjoyed it.
My pleasure.